And welcome back. Let's move on more with learning about MetaTrader and how everything works. We've been through the beginning sections here, how to add a new chart and change some of the windows, placing an order, the auto trading button. But now let's move on to actually changing how our chart actually looks. The next set of tools is quite important to use. What I'm going to do is show you how each of these buttons work, and we're going to start adjusting our chart so that it's easier to read. And let's face it, it does need to look a little bit better than the default MetaTrader setup. Before we discuss these three buttons, let's look at the zoom option. Right now, we are almost completely zoomed out. If you click once, you can zoom out completely, and this information is almost useless to us. So we need to go in, and that's still not enough. And we're going to go in one more time, and then have a look one more time. Now we can actually start seeing the information that the chart is showing us. By default, the first one is selected, which is bar charts. Now, what a bar chart is that we can see the line here. In a 1 hour chart, like it's currently set now, it means that this is the price range that the market's moved. The little tick on the left hand side is the opening price, and the little tick on the right hand side is the closing price. So let me zoom in one more time. Now we can see it quite a bit clearer. So let's look at this candle as an example. The little tick on the left means that this candle opened at that price and it closed at that price 1 hour later. During that time, the market went down to this price and it went up to this price here. So we can see the total movement during that hour as well as the open and the close. So that's 4 pieces of very useful information. Now bar charts show us the same information except in a body. And depending on how you have the colors set up, it determines which direction it went. By default, the black filled bar chart means that it was a bullish market, meaning that the markets went up. And if it's white, like this example here, it means that the markets went down. So in the case of this white candle, it means that it opened at the top of the body and it closed at the bottom of the body. But during the hour, the markets went down to the bottom of this candle, and at some time it was this high. So it's the same as a bar chart, but it's just much easier to read and much quicker to pick out, especially when we start changing the colors. The next option is a line chart. Now, anything larger than the 5-minute chart, the line chart is completely useless because it's only showing us the closing price. We need to see how the market has responded to particular price levels during a specific time. So if we're looking at a 1 hour chart, how useful is this really compared to this, where we can still see the full flow of the market, except we can also see how big each candle is, how much volatility there has been. We can see if certain levels have been tested several times and rejected from, all at a glance. So we're going to be sticking with candlesticks. We've already looked at the zooming in and zooming out. The one thing to take note of is that it's not just making the chart look clearer, but it's also reducing the amount of history that we can see at a glance. So find what's comfortable for you. I personally like to trade at about this zoom level. It's clear enough for me to see each candle and pick up the movements, and I still have enough history that I'm not making a silly mistake by not looking at what happened quite recently. Moving along, we have an option here to arrange windows, and this is if you have multiple charts loaded up. Just going to add some as an example. If you have multiple charts loaded up, you can go ahead and click on this button and it will assort them like this so you can see everything at a glance. For now, we're not going to be using that, so I'm going to close them. The next button is the auto scroll. When this is selected, it will automatically scroll the chart so the area on the right hand side is the most recent. Now this is useful to make sure that you're looking at the chart in real time and you're not accidentally analyzing information that's already several months old. But it can also be annoying when you are trying to look back in history. By clicking and dragging on the chart, we can start scrolling it backwards and you'll see it keeps popping to current time. And this is because every time the chart updates, it wants to snap it back. So if you are looking into history, make sure that you turn off the auto scroll feature, and this will allow you to look back without it popping back the whole time. The next option just shifts the chart over. You'll see it leaves this empty space here. This is very rarely needed for indicators, because with all Forex trading, we're kind of basing our work on recent historical data. You're never 100% certain of what's going to come up, so this over here is really not needed at all. I personally do like to have the empty space. It kind of helps me visualize where the markets will be going, but I don't need this much space. So what you can do, if you do want some space but not as much, you'll see here we have a small triangle. You can click on that and drag it towards the right and then let go. So now we have some space here, which can help you sort of visualize where things are going to go. And sometimes indicators will allow you to shift them over, and it will give you a bit of space for those indicators to draw. This button over here is your indicators list. This button is one that you are going to be using quite a lot. So try to remember where it is, and I know a lot of people get it confused with the add new charts, I think because of the green plus, I'm guessing. So just get used to where the indicators list is. In order to add an indicator to the chart, all you have to do is you click on the button and it'll bring down several options. It is also categorized other indicators like this. So we have trends, we have the oscillators, we have the volume-based indicators, we have some specific Bill-Williams, and then custom indicators as well. So there's quite a few different indicators loaded up here. We will be adding more a little bit later. We're not going to add it now. Just remember where the button is. The next button over here is periods. This is setting the different time frame that we're looking at for trading. If you click on it, it'll bring down the different time frames. It is the same as these buttons across here. So you can choose which one is more convenient for you. I personally like to click on these buttons. I find it's a little bit quicker. Now, just an explanation as to what the time period really means when we're looking at Forex trading. If you look at the charts in front of you, we have what we call candlesticks. Now, depending on the period that you have, each candle is representing a certain amount of time. For example, it's currently set on H1, which is an hourly chart. It means that each candlestick represents 1 hour of time. If I switch this to H4, that is obviously 4 hours. So each candlestick is representing 4 hours of time. So we can see, let's use this candle as an example. During 4 hours, the market opened here and it closed up at the top. At some time, it had a high price at the top there and had a low price at the bottom there. And this took 4 hours for this movement to happen. Different strategies seem to work better on different time frames, and also some traders prefer different time frames to others. You find the very aggressive scalping traders who need to make a lot of profit very quickly usually trade the smaller time frames. The more seasoned long-term traders, people who don't mind holding a trade for several days or several weeks, and are able to put a little bit more money into the market, typically trade the 4-hour or daily chart. I'm going to set mine to 30 minutes. It seems to be a comfortable go-between and a good point to start from to figure out what sort of trader you're going to become. The next button is templates. Once you have set up a chart with the way that you like it to be, with all of the indicators and things like that, you can save it as a template. And that way, when you load a new chart, you can simply apply your template so you don't have to go through all of these settings again. We will create a template shortly, show you how to save it, and then show you how to apply it to new charts. The next set of toolbars, we call this the line studies. There are several very useful tools inside here. By default, the cursor is selected. When you have the cursor, this allows you to click and drag on the chart to change historical or current time, so you can slide back. If you move it over to the far right hand side, you can adjust the vertical scale. This means that you can kind of squash the chart by clicking and dragging down, or you can click and drag up to expand it. If you click and drag at the bottom, it changes the horizontal scale, which is basically your zoom level. So it's a very convenient way to quickly change how things are looking on your chart. The next one is your crosshair. This is a very, very important tool, and it's very, very useful. People who are trading on laptops, I highly recommend you go out and buy yourself a mouse. Any cheap mouse will do, because it allows you to use the crosshair very quickly. You can either click on the crosshair and then move it over to your chart. Now, by default, you'll see here on the horizontal side, it is showing me the price level that I've selected. The vertical line is showing me the time that the candle opened. So for example, this is a 30-minute chart. The area that I've selected, it is telling me the 28th of June 2016 at 1:30. That means that that candle opened up at 1:30. If you are trading with a mouse, like I recommend, you can click your middle mouse button. That's when you push down on your scroll wheel and it brings it up. Now what makes this tool so useful is when you click and drag. Here, I'll show you an example. I'm going to select from here up to the top of that run. So I selected the crosshair, I click and I hold the mouse down and I slide it up here. Now you'll see it's given me 3 sets of numbers. The first number is how many candles have passed. So this is 23 candles. As I move it to the left, the number will get smaller, so let it 0. And then if I keep going, the number gets larger again. So it's telling me how much time has passed basically. On a 30-minute chart, that means 23 half hours have gone by, so 11.5 hours of time. The middle number is the amount of points. So if I move it down, you'll see that the number gets smaller. And as I get to the same entry price, it should hit 0. And then as I go down, the number will get bigger again. So it's showing me the amount of points that the market has moved. Now remember, 10 points to a pip, so that is 1,049 points or 104 pips. The third number is the price that we're looking at. So just by selecting this tool up here, I can go and I can select a run like this one we had here. And I can see that from where I've selected to where it is, it's taken 21 candles, which is 10.5 hours. It was 111 pip movement. I can see the price by that using that 1.11160. And then remember, we still have the crosshairs information written in. So I can see when the run began and at what price it began. So that is a lot of information, especially when looking at historical data or when measuring things out and you need to just quickly get a feel for it and see how long the run is, perhaps from an entry point to a stop loss or from an entry point to take profits. It's a very useful tool and something that you will end up using quite a lot. The next option we have here is to draw in a vertical line. This quite simply pops in a vertical line. You select the tool and then click on the chart and it drops it wherever you selected it. Now sometimes it's a little tricky to get it in the exact right place, so what you can do is select the vertical line, click and hold your mouse button in, and then you can drag it wherever you'd like. And once you're happy with it, you let go. Now the vertical line is putting in a timestamp. I like to think of it as an exact timestamp, and I put these lines in whenever a major news event has come out or something that I need to keep an eye on, and just to make an explanation of what happened. And it gives you a very good timestamp on it. Now you'll notice that this line, if you try and click and drag it again, it's not going to work. Your chart is going to keep moving around. By default, MetaTrader will lock in these lines. This is so when you're looking in history and you're scrolling back like this, you don't accidentally click one of your lines and move it out of place, because that can be disastrous. When you have 50 or 100 different lines throughout history with little notes and you accidentally click on one and drag it out of place, it can take a very long time to figure out where it was and put it back. If you do want to move it, you hover the mouse over it and you double click. You'll see now that we have this small little block that's formed at the top as well as at the bottom. When that is there, it means that we can edit the line. So now we can click on it, move it where we want it, and when we let go, we still have the blocks. So you just double click again, and now it's locked into place. If you want to get rid of the line, one way is to double click. So now it is selected, and then press the delete button on your keyboard. Or you can right click and select delete. Let's do that for this one as well. We're going to double click to select the line, right click, and then delete. So now I've removed both of those lines. The next one is to draw in a horizontal line. Instead of setting a time, this is setting a price level. This is mostly used when we're doing support and resistance lines, but sometimes it's a good idea just to use it when we're marking any kind of price level of interest. It works the same as a vertical line. you can either just click on the chart and then it's locked, or once you've selected it, you can click and drag. And now when I let go of my mouse, it will draw into place. And now it's stuck. And these as well are by default locked into place. In order for us to edit it, we double click. We see that we have the block that is formed, and now I can click and move it where I like. To lock it into place, we double click again. If we want to delete it, you need to double click. Now that it is selected and editable, we can right click and then select delete. I'll do the same for the other one. I'm going to double click, right click, and then delete. The next one we have here is when we're wanting to draw equidistant channels. Some strategies require you to pick up when things are equidistant channels. Equidistant channels is basically when you have a channel that is within a particular range. Equidistant literally means equal distance from each other, so these lines will be parallel. To draw one, you select the tool, you click at a starting point, and then as you move the mouse cursor, you'll see that it is drawing the channel however we would like. And then we let go. Now these lines can also be edited by double clicking, and then you'll see that we can start shifting the rotation of the line. If I select here, it will change the vertical axis, and if I change here, it will change the size. So if we were trying to see, let's say this, if we're trying to see if this fits into a channel, I can select here to put the starting point, I can select here to line it up, and then choose this one here to select the size of the channel itself. Now we can see that this is a more or less channel. I don't think it's terribly great, but that sort of thing will be discussed later. But that is how we'd use equidistant channels. To lock it into place, the same thing applies. You just double click, and now it's locked. To delete, it's the same. You double click, right click, delete. The next option is quite a hot topic, and not always for good reasons. There's a big debate about the Fibonacci system. I think it is something that you should learn and look into and see if it works for you. If you do decide to use it, this is how you use it in Metatrader. You can select on the Fibonacci retracement line. You then choose where your movement began and where it ends. So I'm just using the small movement as an example. You click and you drag and let go. It will now draw in those Fibonacci lines that you need. You have the basic breakdown. Sometimes Fibonacci systems prefer to work on the inverse, and in that case, you would then draw it backwards. So say from here up to there. And it draws it in for you. Now the same things apply. You can double click on your Fibonacci lines. And now we have this block, which will allow us to move our starting and end point however we want it to be. And we double click again to fix it into place. To delete, we double click on the line. We see that it is selected, and we press the delete key or right click, delete. The next options we have here are how we can label our charts. We have regular text and we have a text label. Now the difference between them is this. Drawing text, it will remain in a relative position on the chart, meaning when we slide the chart around or when the chart updates, the text will move with it. So we use this to make a note. For example, if we wanted to make a note of when the Brexit happened, we can find that point and we say, this is when the Brexit news came out. So we might want to make a note. So I can go ahead and I choose draw text. I select where I want to draw it, and then it brings up this information here. This is the name of the object that we're putting on, and it bears no interest in what we're really doing. And we can change the text details here. If you do start using a lot of text labels, then it's not a bad idea to set a name that makes sense to you. It does not appear on the chart. This is more for later reference. Here you can select your font, the size and color. I'm going to leave mine as default and click OK. So now I have a little note on here saying Brexit. So in a couple months time, when I'm using this part as my historical data, I'll know that this is from the Brexit outcome that happened, and I can make my decision based on that. You'll see as I scroll the chart, the text moves with it. Now we have a label. I'm going to put it down over here, and I'm just going to leave the text as it is. Click OK. Now you'll see the difference. When I scroll back, my Brexit moves with the chart, but the label stays where it is. This is useful if you need to leave a note for yourself, or if you've set up a trading system and you just need to remember the basic rules. You might want to put labels on your chart just to remind you of what you should be looking for and what to look out for. This means that whenever you load up that chart, you will have the labels in place. The same rules apply. You can double click, then right click to bring up a menu, and you can either select label properties if you want to change the text, or you could go ahead and delete. These options across here, these arrows, are quite useful. I use them quite a lot when I'm making notes, especially during backtesting. If you select the arrow option, you'll have these thumbs up, thumbs down. That's nice for putting down when you've got a winning trade or a losing trade. Arrow up, arrow down, stop sign, check sign, and then these ones, which I find are very important. I quite like using these price labels. You can select the price label, click and drag on the chart until you find the level you're happy with, and then let go. So now I can go ahead and put in another price label. And if I ever need to refer to that price, instead of needing to use the crosshair or drawing a vertical line or horizontal line for all this kind of information, I can see it on the price label very quickly. The only difference between a left and right price label is where the label is itself. So I'll put down a right price label, and you'll see here that it just means that it's going to draw on the right hand side instead of the left hand side, and there is no real difference except for how it looks. We've already covered how the different periods work in this when we were looking at it underneath this menu here. So that's it for the introduction to MetaTrader and how to put things down. In the upcoming videos, we're going to start editing the chart, looking deep into the chart properties, and making it look ready for us to start trading.